It's Becky behind the camera, and
Hi, I'm Esther, and I'm in front of the camera today.
today we are going to talk about free motion quilting. So I brought Esther in because, let's be honest, I do not do this well. So I brought in someone who I personally look up to do these things for me. I'm going to be honest. I quilt by check. So, but here's Esther.
I loved a free motion quilt. It is actually one of the first things that really drew me to quilting. So today, let's talk about what I've got in front of me. So I've got my sewing machine set up to do free motion quilting, meaning that I've changed out my needle to the right size for my project. I have put on my slider, so to reduce some of the friction. It just makes it easier to move my project around on the bed of my machine without catching. And I have lowered my feed dogs. Now, every machine is going to be a little bit different. This is what I know works for my machine. The other thing that I have done is I have set myself up with a contrasting thread as my thread. And this is personal preference, and it's one of those things that I'm happy to give information about later. The other thing that I have is I have my cheater cloth here. This is fantastic for practicing free motion quilting because you haven't invested any extra time into it than what's here. The other thing that I really love about it is got lots of different colors so that I can practice between coordinating and contrasting threads. And the shapes are really fantastic for figuring out what shapes that you like to quilt with. So this is one of those things that is fantastic to play with. The other thing is that if you want to practice even more water-soluble thread, you can do your basic basting and then use regular thread to stitch around it. Use water-soluble thread in your bobbin, and then you can wash it and practice over and over and over again.
That's awesome, because what do we know about quilting?
The more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly. So, and it's an economical way to do it.
For most people, doing small projects, table runners, even baby blankets, is completely manageable to do on your domestic machine. So the machine that you have at home, you just have to figure out the tips and tricks that work best for your machine. Anything bigger than that, and it's kind of a little bit wearing on your body, not so much that your machine can't do it, but they get really heavy to try and move around. So for those larger projects, that's when you can send them out to your long armor.
Exactly. Leave your long arming budget for your big quilts.
Yes. Yes. So small projects are what I recommend for starting. So the first thing that I'm going to do is decide where I'm going to start, because that's one of the most challenging things for most people. We always want to start from the center and then work our way out. That way, as we're basting, if our basting wasn't great, we're pushing the extra fabric to the outside rather than making it volcano in the center. So for this project, I am going to work on the very center hexagon that's here. So I have 6 separate triangles, and I have my sashing around the outside edge. Most people start with stitch in the ditch. And since the lines are here, that's what I'm going to do. But I have my machine set up with my free motion foot so that I can transition back and forth between the two. Most of the time when you're doing stitch in the ditch, you're going to use your walking foot on your machine. So the first thing I've done is I pulled up my bobbin thread because I want to be able to hold onto my threads on the top. That way I'm not creating a nest on the bottom that is going to potentially unravel. And then I'm going to take a couple of stitches directly in place. What this does is it locks my thread. So I don't have to worry about burying my threads as much as if I were to just keep going. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to define my area. So I'm going to do this triangle in front of me. Actually, how about if I do this triangle back here so that you can see it a little bit better? And all I'm going to do is I'm going to work within my field of control. So think of it like football. I am trying to keep it within my goal.
Oops, hold on. Okay, football. Do that one again.
So I'm working within my field of control. So think of it like football. This is my goalpost. anything within my goalpost is what I have control over the best. And so I'm going to work within that space.
Okay.
So on my project, I have my field of control set, and I'm going to go this direction, and then I'm going to go across and then come back. Okay.
Okay, so I noticed you are not moving your hands while your machine is going.
No, I am not, because this is a power tool, and power tools you need to be careful with. But I've gotten as far as I feel confident in my hand. So I'm going to stop with my needle down, move my hands so that I have relocated my field of control, and then I'm going to keep going again. I'm going to stop. I try not to pivot while I'm in motion. So anytime that I come to a corner or where I know that I'm very obviously changing directions, I will stop, readjust, and then keep going.
Esther, you are a plethora of knowledge, and I know people are going to want more. So we've discussed this about you creating a virtual class.
Yes.
That will take everyone through tools and supplies, everything you need to know about free motion quilting. And we're thinking that will be ready around fall.
Yeah.
Right?
So probably about mid-September, the beginning of October.
Okay.
That will be coming out, and I will talk about everything from what types of tools you need, how to set up your machine, fixing your tension, which is a big thing for domestic machines.
Absolutely.
I will talk about the different shapes, how to decide what patterns to put in each place, and how to transition across your project without cutting your threads.
Okay. And we'll do those in little short snippets so they're manageable for people to do. So it'll be a whole series
of classes.
That's amazing.
Okay, so I have defined my area. What this does is it makes it so that I'm not feeling overwhelmed by trying to do my entire project.
And it locks it in place.
And it locks it in place so that I can feel underneath that everything is smooth and flat, which is really what I want. Most people start with doing the stipple. The stipple is just a wavy line that never crosses itself. And it's a good place to start, but it's actually not my favorite place to start. Because a lot of people, you haven't gotten that fluid motion yet. So my favorite place to start is actually with curves. And think of it just like giant squiggly lines.
Okay.
And I can do any direction that I want, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel down the line that I've already created.
Okay.
Because I'm staying within my defined space. So I'm going to come down, and then I'm going to wiggle across until I hit my other side.
Okay.
Now I'm going to travel along my line, and I'm going to repeat the same thing. But this time I'm not going to try and keep everything identical to what I just did. Because trying to make it identical is going to drive you crazy.
Especially when you're first starting out and you haven't learned how to control those things.
So all I'm doing is I'm just working my way across my space. Kind of just filling in my gaps. Now, the density of my stitching really depends on how tight I want my project to be and what my batting recommends. Most of the current battings, you have about 8 inches. So you can get away with as little as the width of your hand.
Oh, nice.
Anything bigger than that really depends on your quilt pattern. And again, that's one of those things I'll talk about further in my class series. But for me, I could stop here, but what I want to do is go ahead and create a grid across. And so I am going to do my wavy lines going the other direction. And just kind of creating this texture across this space.
This is a great pattern because it's not symmetrical
It's
and really allows for mistakes in learning.
It does. This is actually a really fantastic one to be able to figure out how fast your hands should be moving in relationship to your machine. So now I've got my defined space filled with this kind of net texture.
Awesome. That looks great. Okay, do one more and then we'll probably have to call it a day.
Okay, so I'm going to redefine my next space.
Field of control.
Field of control, that's right. And knowing where I need to focus in really helps. So on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the shapes within the fabric themselves. So this is true free motion quilting. But instead of trying to stay directly on the line, what I'm going to do is echo, meaning that I'm using my foot to kind of trace around the outside of these flowers.
Oh, cute.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it and go, right here on this edge, it touches here and it touches here. So my flower. So I can start either direction, but I'm looking at where my next flower is in relationship to this first one. And this one is closer. So I'm going to start over on this top edge because it means that I will have to travel less to get to my next flower. Okay. So I'm going to travel back along my line. And then I'm going to use the edge of my foot to kind of define that flower. Now, right now, you can't really tell what I'm doing, but I am just kind of going from flower to flower using my foot. This is a great way to fill in spaces, especially if you've got a large pattern.
I also think about those embroidered blocks too,
oh, yes.
like the echoing and whatnot.
The echoing is fantastic. So right here, I'm just kind of following along the edge of my fabric and my defined space, because that is where I have flowers that are really accessible. So, but right here, all I've got is swirls. And my flowers in the middle are too far away to directly touch what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double echo. I'm going to echo around this flower again and this until I can work my way over to my next closest flower. That'll help fill in my space. Edge of my control. But now I've hit a flower, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish defining that. So my next flowers, my last two flowers in this space are over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to travel along my echo line from before, come out and around, and then follow it down until I get to this flower in the corner. And you know what? I think I'm going to do it again because I still have a lot of space here that is going to be open. And I like this flower shape right here. So anything that you like, repeat it over and over again. But now I've come in and I'm touching this middle flower. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change directions and I'm going to trace around that flower. And now I can finish coming down and finishing that echo. Or I could decide, you know what? I think this one has enough echoes. Let's do the other one. It's personal preference. There are no quilting police. And unless you're putting in a show, This is just for you to get the feel of what you're doing. Travel and echo around my last flower. And now I can look at it and go, okay, there's a little bit of space here that didn't get filled in. Adjust my field of control and come in here and finish filling in this spot. So what I'm looking for is that all of my background spaces are pushed down evenly and all of my flowers are all raised because I don't have anything in the middle of them. Okay, one more spot to fill in my background. And then I am good. So when I finish, what I'm going to do is because at this point I'm going to cut my threads so I can show you what it looks like on the back. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch 4 or 5 times in the same place. I'm creating another knot. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to snip my threads.
Awesome.
Okay. So
now we get to see the back.
I have 2 sections here quilted. Very easy. Wavy lines and then echoing. So remember, I made a knot. So this extra thread, I can go ahead and just cut. Personal preference, whether you bury your threads or not. For me, because I know that my knot is secure and I've gone over that spot a couple of times in my defining, I'm going to go ahead and just cut that thread.
Awesome.
And now I'm ready to flip the entire project over and show you the back.
Ta-da!
And that's what it looks like.
How fun!
So I can see that these were flowers just from my shapes.
Nice. Alrighty.
And that is the very basics of free motion quilting.
Awesome. Thanks, Esther.
You're welcome.